This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to Spiritual Psychic with Sarah Wiseman, where you'll learn how to unlock the secrets of spiritual intuition and your own psychic gifts. Here's Sarah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Wiseman. Welcome to Intuitology. And today we're talking about writing and becoming a conscious creative. And specifically, we're talking about kind of unique writing process, not just for writing, but a creativity process that I've been working with for a very long time. So before I journeyed on the spiritual path, which was so unexpected for me and not at all where I thought my life would head, over 20 years ago when things changed. I was a writer. I was a copywriter. I was a journalist. I had ambitions to be a novelist. And, the universe said pretty clearly, oh, we're going to have you write about spiritual intuition and we're going to have you channel spiritual text instead of that novelist path, which turned out okay. But before that, I was really deeply involved in the idea of writing as a practice. And long ago, I used to teach creative writing as a journey. And so this was before my intuition had opened. I was just attempting to teach people how I went about on the creative journey, how I received creative ideas, how I let things flow through me. And again, not spiritual. This was for creative writing. But as things opened up, I realized that what I had been teaching was a kind of intuitive creativity. It was like a precursor to how I would call intuitive gathering right now. It was intuitive gathering for writing and for art and for photography and for all the ways that we create. So I just want to share this process with you and see what you think. I know so many of you out there are writing books and doing art and inventing things and really deep into creative world. So here's just a way of thinking about how I do it. So starting with, when I was raised, this myth that creativity is difficult or fickle or fleeting, or that in order to answer this calling in your heart, you have to give over everything, family and friends and health and security. And that in order to truly create, you have to wander in the wilderness, oblivious to all but your book or your art or your vision. And so these myths have been swirling around us for a very long time. Now, with the advent of social media, we've seen that we can do creative work that can become very popular commercially really quickly. But I'm not talking about that sort of level of creativity where it's fleeting and fast and it's more commercialized. I'm talking about the really deep work and the really deep process of producing something really important. And so for this type of work, this deep creative expression, we've heard all the tales, the writer in his garret, or the starving artist in her studio, or the musician who succumbs to addiction, or the dancer, or the poet, or the director, inventor was forced to endure, these great hardships in order to produce this good work, the real work. And yet, I believe, and I have found that there's really another way to approach creativity. And this is the way of conscious creativity. And this way stems from the understanding that as human beings, we have changed. We have evolved past survival and scarcity and fear to a new understanding. Certainly, we're not completely evolved, but even just this subtle opening in our collective consciousness is enough to allow us to recognize that something is different and that creativity no longer requires struggle. It's the natural result of experiencing our lives as conscious beings, awake and aware in the world. So you can work in this and you can learn to work in this state of openness. And by doing so, you can access unlimited creativity in every moment. And this includes the ability to produce good, by good, I mean quality creative work, real work, and to do this without the struggle. And this also includes without the turmoil and the gnashing of teeth that we've been led to believe that our art requires of us. It is true, you will be required to surrender, which can sometimes be its own turmoil, but in laying down your ego and surrendering to the divine inspiration that will find you at all times, you begin to experience this kind of wild joy and abandoning to awareness and abundance that you have not known before. And it's truly extraordinary. It's a new way of thinking about your creative process, and it's actually a new way of living. So, um, again, what I'm talking about, I'm focusing on writers, but it's anybody that's creating, artist, musician, dancer, designer, scientist, anybody who see things differently and wants to share their unique viewpoint with others. So now here's where we drop into sort of how it works and what I found in my own process over all these many years. I think I started as a writer in third grade. I think that was when I knew this is when I didn't know I'd be doing spiritual writing, but I started at like 7 or 8. This scribbling down, this crafting with words. So I began to understand that there were these 3 creative trances that I would go through. We'll talk about those in a minute. I also began to understand that there's helpers and guides who take us on each part of the creative journey. I also learned to understand that there's synchronicities related to the creative work that continually come and show us what to do next. And I also, most importantly, learned to move how we move outside of ourselves. So again, away from ego, away from attachment, and we let the universe move through us in the creation of our art. So a more clear way, we don't create art or writing. We are the tube or the conduit, and it comes through us. And it's a really different way of looking at creativity. It doesn't come from me, it comes through me. It doesn't come from my hand, it comes through my hand. And this surrender, this getting out of the way of our ego and just letting it come through, it means that creativity is no longer a burden. We don't need to be in charge of it. We don't have the pressure of being the creator. We're just the receiver. So, okay, let's go back to this idea that the old myth, creativity, it's not fickle or fleeting or something to be chased or captured. You don't need to give up everything, the comforts of home, the joy of relationships, the balance of health in order to attain it. Unlimited creativity is the unavoidable consequence of surrender to the universe on the spiritual plane. It arrives to us when we gain the true understanding that we are not separate but one. And so, whenever we're entering the creative process, whether we're in this first stage of heeding the call to our work, or the second stage of gathering inspiration for the work, or the third stage of creating the work itself, it's all easy and effortless. So, let's go back and look at those three stages. Intention, heed the call. We are going to receive, we can feel it building in our body, we can feel it in that sort of agitated, like something's going to happen. You're heeding the call that the receiving is going to happen. Gathering, we go out and we let the universe show us what to pay attention to. That becomes part of our work. And flow, we enter into like a fugue state, and the work creates itself. We let the work create itself. We just are there as receiver. We're typing on the keyboard, we're painting, it's coming through us, we're letting it flow. And so when we're working in this new paradigm, we don't, we aren't working by ourselves. We are working with these different guides, and we are working we are working with helpers. And this is what is kind of surprising, that there are also different ways of accessing this information. There's these three trances or passages or journeys or flows or fugue states in which those three steps, intention, gathering, and flow, happen effortlessly. Again, we're going to go outside ourselves, outside of our earth reality, to a place that's beyond craft and beyond talent or beyond practice. And in this way of doing creative work, we are met by guides and helpers and deities and energies. And they whisper to us. They whisper to us in our mind's ear, and they show us things in our mind's eye, and they give us signs and synchronicities that lead us to the next answer. And we are provided the knowing to work freely in our process. So we are fully supported by forces known and unknown as the universe works through us to create art. Again, we're always receiving. So, what are these three trances? First is the trance of the muse, in which we hear the whisperings. We allow ourselves to receive the whisperings. The trance of the seeker, in which we wander through the world. We wander and watch for what shows up. And the trance of the alchemist, in which we enter flow and we transform all of this, the whispering and the gathering, into its highest possibility. The muse, the seeker, the alchemist, each will call and each will invite. And if you answer these intoxicating summons, each will journey with you for a while. Now, each of these callings, the muse, the seeker, the alchemist, they come in their own proper timing at the proper stage of your creative journey. They arrive in order, one after another, and they follow these immutable laws of the creative process. So the first to beckon and seduce is the muse, and then the next is the seeker to go and explore and gather, and the next is the alchemist to put things together. When you accept this idea that the universe is always connecting with you, and that you do not create, everything is created already, you're instead receiving from a benevolent universe that shows you highest possibility, the whole process becomes different. You're no longer struggling to figure it out by yourself, or you're no longer, certainly no longer in competition with this person or that person in your field. You're no longer struggling to get a new idea. It's just like there's a window and you open it and everything just sails in. Everything just sails in. And this, of course, goes over to where your life is. You become an artist. You become an artist not just in the receiving of your writing or the receiving of your art, but this way of being begins to be how you live. So, without exception, all creative exploration affects the creator. Um, and while this is freeing, of course, it's very scary. You can't create in a deep and powerful way unless you're willing and ready to open that can of worms that we call your stuff, your baggage, and your life, and sort of take a look at the mess usually that lies within. And of course, this is where your art is. The mess is where your art is. And I sometimes call this pulling your heart out of your chest and putting it on the paper. This for writers. And pulling your heart out of your chest and putting it on the canvas for painters and so forth, musicians, things to sound. In the exhibiting of your heart, something happens. We become holy in the opening of our inner sacred. And by sacred, I do not mean that you'll be writing holy tracks or painting pictures of Jesus or Buddha. Many of you will, but by holy, I mean that you will find and create from your own inner sacred, whatever that means to you. It's the deepest, most real place inside of you that is crying out to be heard. In reaching inside of this hallowed place and putting your heart on the page, you're also going to create a deep personal resonance in your soul. You'll see and understand at levels you might not have imagined as you open into what the universe would like you to explore. And I just think for me, in this process of living this way for so many years now, first creatively and then spiritually creative, uh, first creatively in a more of a creative writing way, and now creative in a spiritual way. It's just really an astonishing way to live. If you would like to explore this, this is a $15 course. Um, it's called a Writer's Retreat, 28 Days as a Conscious Creative. I think that's what it's called. It's for writers, it's for painters, it's for dancers, it's for inventors, it's for anyone, or it's for business people who want to think differently about their business. Um, it's super low cost, but it's very intensive. It's a very intensive project. So you can complete it in whatever time frame you like, but just know like there's a lot to chomp on there, and it's a really big creative retreat if you want to take it at that level, or you can take it in a simple way. It's all up to you. I am Sarah Wiseman. You'll find everything, including what we've been talking about, Writer's Retreat, 28 Days with the Muse. It's on my website, sarahwiseman.com. I wish you the best, and thank you for listening.